I like the quiet ones. Quiet ones break pretty.
New fish, Ricky Doyle said. Smile for me. The slap came open-palmed, loud, flat, final. It cracked across the prison yard like a gunshot and hung in the hot afternoon air long after the sound was gone. 60 men went silent. Trays stopped moving. Conversations dropped dead. The kind of silence that doesn't happen by accident. The kind that means every man in that yard already knew what Ricky Doyle was capable of. And not one of them was willing to find out if today was the day he decided to go further. The new man's head moved with the blow, slow, then returned to center. He said nothing. No flinch, no backward step, no fury rising in his face. Just stillness. The kind of stillness that doesn't read as fear until you look close enough to notice that it isn't fear at all. It's something older than that. Something trained. Doyle leaned in. I like the quiet ones, he said, loud enough for the yard to hear. Quiet ones break pretty. He walked away, laughing. His crew fell in behind him. The yard exhaled. But in the far corner, on a concrete bench nobody else used, an older man with a gray beard and half glasses sat very still. He had been watching the new man from the moment Doyle moved. He watched the way the slap landed, watched the stillness, watched the right hand close, slow, deliberate, finger by finger, and then open again. His eyes went narrow. He had seen that hand before. Not here, not in a yard like this, on a television screen 7 years ago during the United States Olympic trials, in the last 60 seconds of a middleweight final that stopped every trainer in the country cold. He knew what Ricky Doyle had just touched, and he knew Doyle had no idea. If you've ever had to hold yourself back when everything inside you was ready, stay with this story. Subscribe now, because what Ricky Doyle didn't know about the quiet man he just slapped is going to change everything in this yard. And we are nowhere near done. Crestfield Federal Correctional sat 2 hours past the last highway exit, behind chain-link fences and a silence so complete that new men said they could hear their own heartbeat on the first night. The walls held 900 men. The yard smelled of concrete, rust, and old heat. And Marcus Cole had been inside for 11 days. Before Crestfield, his name meant something entirely different than it meant here. Middleweight. Amateur record, 31 wins, 2 losses. 26 years old with a left hook that coaches called surgical. Not because it was big, but because it arrived exactly where the opponent least expected it, at precisely the moment they had stopped protecting it. Promoters had flown in from both coasts. One had slid a contract across a diner table with a training facility attached and a number that had 6 figures in it. Marcus read it twice. Then he folded it in half and pushed it back. She already lost her mother, he told the man. She's not losing her father, too. Maya was 4 years old when Diane died. A truck ran a red light at 50 miles an hour on a Tuesday evening in October. And by the time Marcus arrived at the hospital, still in his hand wraps from the gym, still carrying the smell of the heavy bag, the only thing left of the life he had planned was a small girl with a bruised shoulder and her mother's eyes, sitting in a plastic chair, holding a paper cup of juice with both hands and waiting for someone she recognized. He took her home. He worked the docks at dawn and coached youth boxing on weekends and packed her lunch every single morning and taught her to tie her shoes on the living room floor. He was, by any honest measure, the most dangerous man in most rooms he entered. The only thing he thought about was whether she was warm enough. Then came the robbery he did not commit. A grainy security tape, a rushed lineup, a public defender carrying 38 other cases who had read exactly 4 pages of Marcus's file before the trial began. The jury took 3 hours. Maya was 7 when they took him. She stood in the gallery beside her grandmother and did not cry until her father turned and looked at her one last time. She had learned that from him. Ricky Doyle had been inside Crestfield for 9 years, 6 for aggravated assault, 3 more added after he broke a man's orbital bone in the cafeteria over a disagreement about a television channel. He had not expressed regret about either. He had, in fact, built his entire reputation on the understanding that regret was a currency for men who lost, and Ricky Doyle had not lost anything in 9 years that he hadn't chosen to get up first. He ran Block D the way a landlord runs a building he owns outright. Commissary tribute collected on Mondays. Phone minute taxes enforced on Thursdays. Fear distributed in carefully measured doses. Never enough to cause an incident that required outside attention. Always enough to ensure that no man on the block ever woke up and forgot who held the real authority here. He was not simply violent. He was intelligent about violence, which made him considerably more dangerous than a man who simply enjoyed hurting people. What made him untouchable was not his size. It was Officer Kevin Marsh. Marsh had worked the D-block floor for 7 years and had developed an arrangement with Doyle that neither of them ever discussed aloud because it did not need discussion. Doyle kept the block controlled and predictable. Marsh kept the camera maintenance schedules conveniently timed, kept his incident reports clean and institutional, and kept his back turned on the nights when Doyle needed the tier to himself. When a junior guard had once pointed toward the block and asked Marsh directly what was happening to the new man in D, Marsh had not looked up from his desk. "Quiet block is a safe block," he said. "You want noise? Transfer to B." The junior guard went quiet. That was how it always spread. Doyle had studied Marcus Cole for 11 days before the slap. He watched which corner Marcus took in the cafeteria, watched how long he stared at the photograph he kept folded in his shirt pocket, watched the way he moved through the tier, careful, deliberate, never brushing shoulders, never holding eye contact a second longer than necessary. A man conserving something, a man carrying something he couldn't afford to put down. Doyle had broken 40 men in 9 years at Crestfield. He knew the architecture of a quiet man better than most people knew their own homes. He could read the difference between a man who was gentle and a man who was afraid, between patience and surrender, between a man holding back and a man who had nothing left to hold. He read Marcus Cole as afraid. It was the last serious mistake Ricky Doyle ever made inside those walls. This story is just getting started, and the moment everything breaks open is closer than you think. Subscribe now so you don't miss what happens when Doyle finally goes too far. Doyle understood power the way surgeons understand anatomy. You don't cut everything at once. You find the one thing keeping the man breathing, and you go there slowly, methodically, with the patience of someone who has nowhere else to be and nothing but time to spend. He had mapped Marcus in 11 days, had cataloged every small habit, every quiet routine, every careful choice the man made to move through Crestfield without friction. And what he found, beneath all that careful stillness, was the one thing that mattered. The photograph, folded in the shirt pocket, looked at twice a day, once in the morning before the block opened, once at night before the lights dropped. A small girl with a missing front tooth and her mother's eyes, grinning the kind of grin that has no vanity in it whatsoever. Doyle filed that detail away like a weapon. He started small. Night 1, Marcus returned to his cell and found the photograph on the floor, a boot print pressed across the little girl's face. He picked it up without a word, cleaned it carefully with the hem of his sleeve, set it back on the shelf. His hands did not shake. Night 2, the commissary disappeared. The soap, the stamps, the instant coffee his mother had sent from home, the empty wrappers left in a neat row on his pillow, arranged like a signature. Night 3, the letters stopped arriving. Marcus wrote Maya every 3 days, addressed in careful block letters, sealed by hand. He had no way of knowing they were being held at the tier mail collection, bundled in a drawer, never passed forward. Maya stopped writing back because she believed he had stopped writing first. He sat through mail call 8 straight times, with a face that slowly closed like a door being shut from the inside. Day 7. Marcus carried his tray to the corner table, back to the wall. He was halfway through the meal when Doyle crossed the room with 2 men flanking him like shadows. The cafeteria noticed before Marcus did. Forks went still. Conversations died. By the time the shadow fell across his tray, Marcus already knew. Doyle reached over without a word and flipped it. The food hit Marcus square in the chest and slid to the floor, the milk carton bursting on the concrete. White spread down his gray shirt like something torn open. The cafeteria laughed, not everyone, but enough. Enough that the laughter became a wall, and Marcus stood inside it, wet and alone, with 200 men looking at him and not one of them standing up. He knelt. He cleaned the floor with a napkin that fell apart in his hand. He carried the ruined tray to the bin. His hands did not shake. By the door, Marsh watched the whole thing unfold. When Doyle glanced his way, Marsh did the smallest thing imaginable. He nodded. That night, Marcus got 4 minutes on the tear phone. His mother's voice came through small and careful. "She thinks you forgot her," his mother said. "She hasn't heard from you in 2 weeks. She cried herself to sleep 3 nights in a row." Marcus pressed his forehead against the wall above the phone. He breathed in for 4 counts, out for 4. The way his trainer had taught him between rounds, when his body wanted to quit and his mind had to decide for it. 1 swing. That was all it would take. 1 swing, and he would feel like himself for 3 seconds and lose everything. More years, more walls, Maya growing up without a father, while he sat in a punishment cell for teaching Ricky Doyle a lesson nobody in this building would believe he had earned the right to teach. He kept the hands down. He hung up. He walked back to his cell and sat on the edge of the mattress and looked at the photograph of his daughter until the lights went out. The following morning, Doyle stopped him in the corridor, leaned in close, dropped his voice to just below what anyone nearby could hear. "Your little girl called the block office yesterday," he said. "Wanted to know if her daddy was okay." He smiled. "I told her he was doing just fine." He walked away laughing. Marcus stood in the corridor for 30 full seconds and did not move. Then he walked to the library, sat down across from the gray-bearded man on the corner bench, and said nothing for a long moment. Walter Sims looked at him over the half-glasses. 31 years training professional fighters before a conviction that had nothing to do with boxing put him inside Crestfield. He had recognized Marcus Cole from the yard on day 1, had watched the slap, had watched the stillness, and had been waiting for exactly this moment. "He used her," Marcus said quietly. Walter nodded once. "They always find the one thing," he said. "That's how you know they're scared of everything else." Marcus looked at his hands flat on the table, the hands that had scored points at the Olympic trials, that had wrapped around Maya's small fingers every morning for 3 years. "They want me to swing first," he said. "Then don't," Walter said. "But when it comes to you, and it is coming, you finish it clean. No extra, no revenge. You stop it, and you walk away." He paused. "That's the only version of this, where you get home to her." Marcus sat with that for a long moment. Then he stood, folded the photograph back into his shirt pocket, and walked out of the library. Ricky Doyle had broken 40 men in 9 years. He had never once stood across from a father who had already survived the worst thing a man can survive, and chosen every single morning since to keep going anyway. He was about to find out why that was different. It happened on a Thursday afternoon, 2 days before visiting day. Doyle knew about the visit because Doyle knew everything about the men on his block. He knew Maya was coming. He knew it was the first visit since intake. He knew what it meant to Marcus, had watched the man's entire posture change the moment the approval came through, something loosening behind the eyes, something close to relief rising in a face that had been holding itself flat for 2 weeks straight. Doyle had looked at that relief and made a decision. The yard. 2 in the afternoon. Full population spread across the concrete in the hard, flat sunlight. Doyle crossed the yard with 4 men and stopped Marcus on his walk back from the library. 60 men watched without watching, the particular skill every man in Crestfield had developed, seeing everything while appearing to see nothing. "Heard your kid's coming Saturday," Doyle said, loud enough to carry across the yard. "You should cancel it. Little girl doesn't need to see what this place makes of her daddy." He stepped close. "She's going to find out eventually." The punch came without further warning. Overhand right, all 250 pounds committed behind it, built to end the conversation before it started. To the 60 men watching, what happened next looked like physics failing. Marcus simply was not where he had been. A half step left, weight transferred in the same motion, the fist passing his ear close enough to disturb the air beside it. He didn't speak, he didn't load up. He answered with a single right-hand counter directly behind Doyle's momentum. Short, compact, arriving at the jaw hinge where the nerves live. Doyle's legs went first. His body followed, all 250 pounds of it, going down the way buildings go down, slow at the top and fast at the bottom, hitting the concrete with a sound that ended every remaining conversation in the yard. 3 seconds. The first of Doyle's crew came from the left. Marcus caught the arm, turned his hips, redirected the man's own weight into the ground. 1 short strike on the way down. The man sat hard and stayed. The second swung twice. Marcus slipped both, stepped inside, delivered 2 body shots that folded the man completely. He went down breathing, but finished. 9 seconds. The third looked at the concrete and put both hands up. "I'm done," he said. "I'm done, man." "Then step back," Marcus said. 11 seconds, start to finish. Marcus stood in the center of the yard, chest rising and falling, hands already lowering. He did not stand over Doyle. He did not look at the crowd. He walked to where Doyle lay, knelt, checked the airway, made sure the breathing was clear. Then he stood. Then he walked away. He had not said a single word of victory. 60 men watched him go. Not one of them made a sound. And in the far corner of the yard, the junior guard who had once asked Marsh about what was happening on D Block and been told to stay quiet, reached slowly for his radio. This is the moment everything changed inside Crestfield. But what happened next hit harder than anything in that yard. Subscribe and stay with us, because the last 2 parts of this story are the ones that matter most. The junior guard's radio call did something that had not happened in 3 years on D Block. It went directly to the shift supervisor, bypassing Kevin Marsh entirely. Because 60 men had witnessed the assault begin with Doyle, and 60 witness statements cannot be managed the way one man's letters can be managed, or one man's phone time, or one man's mail sitting in a drawer going nowhere. The state corrections inspector arrived within 72 hours. Marsh fell first. The camera maintenance logs told a story he could not explain away. 17 scheduled maintenance windows across 2 years, each one landing on the same nights that D-Block incident reports showed unusual activity. A pattern invisible to anyone not specifically looking for it. Completely obvious to anyone who was. The inspector was looking. Within a week, Marsh was suspended pending investigation. Before the month ended, his badge was pulled and criminal charges for falsifying official records were filed. The nod he had given Doyle across a cafeteria, the smallest thing imaginable, had become the single detail that finished his career. With Marsh gone, Doyle's kingdom had no walls. The men who had paid tribute for years, who had looked away and stayed quiet because the math never worked in their favor, suddenly found the math had changed. 3 of them filed formal statements the same morning. 2 more followed by the end of the week. Doyle faced felony assault charges on 4 counts. The parole timeline he had spent 9 years counting toward, collapsed entirely. A man who believed he had 2 years remaining was now looking at 8 more. The king of D-Block walked to his hearing in cuffs. The yard was silent as he passed. Not the silence of fear, the other kind. Then the lawyers turned to the conviction that had put Marcus inside in the first place. A legal aid organization had been watching the case since intake. They requested a full review of the original robbery charge, pulled the complete gas station footage, not the cropped version the detective had used, and found a man 4 inches shorter than Marcus, walking with a limp Marcus had never had in his life. The clerk, shown a clear photograph for the first time, said the words that should have been said 3 years earlier. That's not him. The court vacated Marcus Cole's conviction on a Tuesday morning. Wrongful imprisonment, immediate release. Marcus's mother drove. Maya sat in the back seat the entire 40 miles with her hands folded in her lap and did not speak once. She had not spoken much in 3 years. Not since the morning they told her where her father was going and why, and how long he would be gone. She had listened to all of it with the same careful stillness he had taught her without meaning to, and she had carried it the way he carried things, quietly, close to the chest, never letting it show on the surface. The car stopped in the parking lot outside Crestfield's main gate. The door opened. She saw him standing on the other side, free, upright, whole, and she ran. She did not say anything. She did not slow down. She hit him at full speed the way children run toward the one thing in the world they were afraid of losing. And he caught her and held her, and the entire parking lot went quiet, the way crowds go quiet around something they understand is larger than anything a photograph could contain. He did not raise a fist. He did not make a speech. He just held his daughter and let everything else fall away. Marcus Cole never returned to professional boxing. He opened a training gym 4 blocks from Maya's school. Youth program. No fees, no record checks, no questions about where you came from. He hung one sign above the door. Open corner. Because every fighter, he said, deserves a corner that never closes on them. He taught one lesson above all others. The hardest punch you will ever throw is the one you decide not to. Have you ever had to hold yourself completely still when everything inside you was ready to respond? When staying quiet cost you more than any fight ever could? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If this story moved you, share it today with someone who is quietly holding the line for the people they love. And if you want more stories about the ones this world counted out before the final round, subscribe. Your corner is right here.